What if the things you fear in the world are not actually there? Could it be that the chaos you feel, the uncertainty, the threat, is not truly happening to you, but is actually a reflection of the thoughts you've chosen to value? Today, in Lesson 53, we review the 5 ideas that dismantle the very foundation of fear. These ideas are based on one core commonality, which is that the meaning that we have assigned is not the true meaning. So when you hear the word meaningless in this context, we are speaking about misaligned meaning. So let's take a look at these 5 ideas in their original form. It begins with, my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear. God did not create a meaningless world. And lastly, my thoughts are images that I have made. When we are talking about meaninglessness in this context, we are talking about misaligned meaning. In other words, the meaning that your mind has assigned to the particular situation of fear is not the true meaning. For example, your mind may have assessed the situation and assigned the meaning of threat, of attack, of loss, of judgment, of some form of separation. But reality itself does not contain those qualities. Those are interpretations layered on top. This is not a poetic metaphor. This is a true and complete reversal of cause and effect as it is believed in the world. The truth is that the world is not producing your thoughts. Your thoughts are producing your world. So far in this review, lessons 51 and 52 dismantled first the meaning in the world, and second, the past as perception. In this lesson, we're aiming to dismantle the belief that the chaotic or fearful world is real. In essence, this lesson gently says that if God did not create meaninglessness, then what you fear cannot be ultimate reality. Could God have created a meaning that is about threatening the creation that He extended as His own being? Keep in mind when we say He, this is just the convenience of language. We're not talking about a masculine Father God. We are talking about the ultimate source, the one infinite creator. Think about it. If God did not create a meaning that is about God's creation attacking itself, then that cannot be the reality. It must mean that you are experiencing reality through a filter. When you recognize this, at its core, it restores dignity and power to your mind. You begin to feel into the very creative capacity to shape reality at your own subjective personal level. Because if the world is an image, then healing begins at the source, which is thought. And beneath the insane thoughts, the thoughts that paint the world in pictures of attack, threat, and separation, are real thoughts, the thoughts you share with the infinite creator himself, which would show you In fact, a very different world. The core insight that this review is extending to us is that fear comes from believing in a world generated by meaningless thoughts. They are meaningless because they are not shared with the source of creation. Here's how these 5 ideas collapse into one unified thought system. First, meaningless thoughts, which are thoughts divorced from the source of creation, generate a meaningless world. In other words, a world that is divorced from the source of creation. That meaningless world naturally results in upset. Meaninglessness itself is reflected in and as the experience of fear. But the infinite creator did not create meaninglessness. And so the world I see must be made from my thought images and is not a true reflection of reality with a capital R. So if we put it all together, we might say it like this: the world I fear is not created by God. It is generated by the thoughts I choose to believe. But this review is pointing to something deeper than my thoughts shape my world. It essentially says that the world you experience is a projection of the quality of your thinking. So if your thoughts are chaotic, the world will appear chaotic. If your thoughts are fearful, the world will appear threatening. There will always be a perfect and corresponding match between your thoughts and what you see in perception. So the real shift is this: you are not living in a meaningless universe, a universe that's disconnected from the source of life and love. Instead, you are perceiving through a meaningless thought system. And that's very, very different. The universe is not insane. The universe is not about attacking itself. But the interpretive layer is. And because the interpretive layer is optional, then fear is optional. So if we had to reduce this entire review lesson to just one crystalline insight, it would be this: the world I fear is the reflection of thoughts I can choose to release. So let's take this contemplation deeper now. I want to invite you to drop out of conceptual thinking for a moment and connect with that lucid sense of presence. You might do so by taking a deeper breath and allowing your body to relax. Begin to listen and sense the silence behind the words, the stillness behind the movement. And consider a moment now where you might have felt a sense of overwhelm. Maybe something you saw on the news, maybe a personal conflict you experienced, maybe a loss or an instability. It could be anything from financial fear to even a health anxiety. Just allow the situation to present itself to you. And as you behold it now, pause and allow yourself to recognize this what I am beholding now may not be really attacking or threatening or in any way diminishing me. The way I see this now may be my own thoughts reflected back to me. And if my thoughts created the meaning that I experience as fear or overwhelm or threat, then those same thoughts can release it. There's nothing more that I want you to do except just to rest in this possibility. This is not about forcing or changing anything. It is simply about noticing. So take these next few moments now to notice and contemplate the possibility that anything that you fear about this situation may simply be a reflection of the thoughts you can choose to release. And now let's begin to unfold this contemplation into dialogue. And the very first question that I want to bring to us is this. Shanti, when you look at these 5 lessons, what is the core pattern that you're seeing?
That's a good place to start. What strikes me is how consistently they're chipping away at the sense that perception is reality. Each lesson subtly shifts the groundwork, almost like dismantling a scaffold, little by little. It's not that the world isn't there, more that we're seeing it through this lens of story, this layer of meaning-making that's just not truthful. What do you notice about that pattern?
Yeah, I feel like at the core of it, this lesson is revealing to us that fear or that sense of threat or whatever it is in the world that we experience as stress really comes from believing in a world generated by our own thoughts and thoughts that are not sourced in the source of creation itself, but rather perhaps even the opposite. Instead of love, we experience something that seems to reflect danger.
Right. So we get caught up in this feedback loop where we project our fear onto what we perceive, then we react to the projection as if it were coming from out there. It's like we're creating the problem, perceiving it, then getting upset about it. I wonder if the most challenging part isn't recognizing this pattern exists. It's being willing to see what else gets revealed when you stop defending the stories that fuel it.
Right. So when the Course says, my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world, it is suggesting that the world of separation, threat, fear, stress might only be a reflection of our own thinking. So is it accurate to say that that world of fear is simply an echo of a thought system that we really just haven't questioned?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. The stories we tell ourselves, the ones we've repeated so many times, become our reality. They create a perception of solidity that's completely constructed. But if the foundation is meaningless thoughts, then the whole structure is pretty flimsy, right? And the Course keeps pointing back to that. It's not about fixing the world out there. It's about recognizing the meaninglessness of what's happening in our minds.
So when life feels chaotic or stressful, then we're not reacting to events out there or the situations or anything that is factual. We are reacting to our own unexamined beliefs. Is that right?
Exactly. The upset isn't coming from what's happening, it's a response to how we're interpreting it. And the interpretation is based on those beliefs we haven't questioned. The Course calls that judgment. So, like, Your boss is critical. That's just a situation. The chaos happens when you assign meaning to that situation through past experiences, expectations, fears, the whole story you've built around it. The situation itself is just data, but you decide what it means.
So, then if the subjective world is essentially self-made, what happens to fear when we stop believing in it?
That's the kicker, isn't it? The interesting thing is, the Course seems to suggest it just dissolves. Like, fear needs the story to survive, that narrative about what's happening and what it means. If there's no story, if we're just present with the experience without all the extra meaning, the fear has nothing to feed on. It doesn't disappear in the sense of, oh, I'm not feeling tense anymore. It's more like the fear wasn't real to begin with. It was a phantom limb in the mind. What's that feel like to you when you actually notice it?
Well, this is actually what I was going to ask next is, can you bring us a corollary example from just daily experience that would echo that same pattern?
I mean, think about when you're waiting for flight delay or stuck in traffic. If you go down the road of catastrophizing, I'm going to be late, my whole day is ruined, everyone is going to be mad at me, that creates so much inner turmoil, right? But if you can just sit with that moment as is, I'm sitting here, the car isn't moving, there's no story to make it dramatic, it's just what is happening. The anxiety you can stir up there creates the bigger reality than the traffic itself does, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, so we can take something on the screen of our experience and tell a story about it that creates an intensified sense of stress or fear or threat. But in essence, like, a lot of that could be entirely debased, right? Because maybe there I am in traffic and I'm so concerned that somebody is going to be upset with me or I'm going to lose out on some opportunity. But then I arrive at the, at the appointment, let's say, and that person was even more late than I was.
Exactly. You've got this whole drama playing out in your mind, and meanwhile, reality is just unfolding differently. It highlights that space between the story and what's actually happening. The thing is, that space might be uncomfortable at first, because the story feels so solid. But it's also where we find freedom. It's where we stop being controlled by what we think should be versus what actually is.
Can you expand on that a little bit in terms of us finding freedom in it?
Well, think about it. If you're constantly reacting to your story of what should be versus what is, you're actually living a fractured life. You're never fully present because part of you is always defending the narrative. But if you're okay with this is what's happening now, then you can actually respond genuinely rather than react from a story. Freedom isn't about eliminating difficult experiences, it's about ceasing to defend a perception of events. Like stopping resistance, you actually move beyond needing to control things or find a right and wrong or judge it at all.
Okay, let's circle back to that aspect where we're talking about that God did not create a meaningless world. What is meaningless in this context? What does that actually mean?
That's a really good question. The meaninglessness isn't that life has no value or God's creation is empty. It's about our stories, our concepts, our beliefs, our judgments, all the things we add on to experience. Those meanings create separation, fear, and a sense of lack. God's creation is pure being, pure presence. It doesn't need stories or explanations to exist. Meaningless refers to those layers we've built over top that aren't actually part of God's original design.
So God is the source of meaning, which is expressed as pure being. And then that sense of overlay is the meaninglessness, which is not sourced in God. It is self-authored within the mind. So what does that imply about the world that we keep defending as, well, that's just the way it is?
Right, you're seeing it now. That sense of that's just the way it is. That's actually the ego defending its own projection. When we encounter something that stirs up emotion or reaction, it feels so real that we treat it as objective, fixed truth. But it's actually just our interpretations that feel real. The world as the ego presents it is meaningful, but it's not meaningful in the ultimate sense the Course is pointing to. It's based in self-preservation, separation, and ultimately unreal stories. So to truly see the world without those layers, well, that's a whole other way of being.
So suffering then is essentially an image made by thought, right? And how can we be in our day-to-day without that story?
Well, I think that's the practice, isn't it? The moment you notice yourself spinning in a story about something, your mind is making an interpretation about what's happening. What if you just paused? Not to analyze it or fix it, just to let it be there without adding fuel to the fire. When you can rest in the simple noticing rather than get sucked into the drama, that's where the Course says peace resides. Not in avoiding difficult situations, but in changing your relationship to them. It is like resting in spacious awareness while experience is happening.
This is beautiful. It seems like that there's some kind of anchor, right? What is that? That payoff that we get from believing the world is dangerous, unfair, or broken.
That's the tricky part. There's this perverse sense of satisfaction in being right, in validating our story about how broken the world is, how unfair someone treated us. We get a little hit of moral righteousness, but it's actually just fear disguised as wisdom. The ego really loves its narrative. Like, the martyr story is a powerful one. I'm the only one who understands how bad things are. But in that role, there's also this investment in keeping the drama alive, because that's who you are in that story.
Yeah, so it really comes back down to identity.
Absolutely. The whole structure is propped up by identity. I'm the victim, I'm the wrong one, I'm the one who's right. The stories serve as building blocks for our self-concept. So what is left if you remove the identities that come from all of those stories? That's what's so terrifying and liberating at the same time.
Yeah, very beautifully put. Here's what I want to do.
How are you?
Shanti, before we wrap this up, I want to ask you, is there a question that I didn't ask you that maybe you could help to bring to this conversation and help also to bring the response to it that could really give us an expanded perspective of this lesson and really help us to integrate the gift that's available here?
I do. What keeps getting overlooked in these discussions is actually pretty simple but profound. You've gone deep on all the ways your thoughts create the experience of meaninglessness and how to step out of those stories. But what about noticing when that very inquiry itself becomes a new story? The wanting to get this lesson, the striving for stillness or peace, even is becoming identity again. The lesson says, nothing I see means anything. That includes the striving, the wanting, the questioning, the intellectualizing of spiritual seeking. Can we just be done with all the efforts to understand it and see what appears instead?
Digesting over the last little while how this desire to understand, the desire to know the mind of God, right, just becomes yet another ego game. And I love the way that you pointed it out.
It's like we create a new project. Being spiritual, being enlightened. And that just creates more to work on. Gift of lesson 51 through 55 is that it just is here already. You don't have to get better at understanding. It doesn't need improving, expanding, or deepening.
I love it. You brought
So
something really
beautiful
cool
when it
here to our
arises
conversation. And I thank you for that. And now, as we come to the close of this contemplation, I want to invite you into that openness again. That very space that Shanti pointed out, that receptivity, that absence of striving or trying to get it. We can say that there's a world that reflects chaos, and there's a world that reflects divine meaning, that's felt as peace. Only one of them is real. So if you're willing to withdraw your belief from the world of fear and striving, then I invite you to mark this moment for yourself and share your insight in the comments below. And now, let us go into the silence.